It is a Ray versus the Rays rematch for tonight in MLB DFS because last week we saw Robbie Ray dismantle the Tampa Bay Rays with 13 strikeouts across 7 innings, but now they get a matchup, a rematch between themselves and Robbie Ray and a chance at redemption. There's more familiarity here. So the question is, do we go back to the guy who just dropped like a 70 burger against this exact same team last week, or do we get worried about the familiarity and go elsewhere in MLB DFS? That is our answer, our question for tonight. Let's answer that now and get you set for the slate. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Monday's 7-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 for tonight. And thankfully, there are no weather issues ahead of us, so we can play things straight up, pick our favorite plays, and go from there. Before we take a look at the pitching preview, though, quick reminder, we have our NFL DFS Recap Podcast every Monday, 9 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page. That's why the solo shot is at 8 a.m. The Recap Podcast at 9 a.m. with myself and Brandon Gadula, breaking down all the big takeaways from week number 2. A lot of quarterback injuries to discuss this week, but also some fun wide receiver breakouts. So there is some bad, but also a lot of good to discuss. We'll talk about that at 9 a.m. and it will be up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a rating and review as well. Hey, football fans, FanDuel is giving new users an exclusive offer to play NFL Daily Fantasy for free all season long. All you have to do is sign up for FanDuel Daily Fantasy, and you'll receive 1 free voucher for each remaining week of the NFL season. You will receive your voucher upon sign up to the FanDuel Daily Fantasy, and vouchers will automatically apply to each weekly entry. Head over to FanDuel.com and sign up to play Daily Fantasy Football. Eligibility restrictions apply. New users only. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. Pitching preview for this Monday main slate. Robbie Ray is the highest salary pitcher on FanDuel, checking in at $11,000. Shocker. Sean Manaea checked $600. Framber Valdez is $93. Ranger Suarez solidifying that increased strikeout rate, $9,000. We have Freddie Peralta, Nestor Cortes, Huascar Ynoa, and John Means as the others at $8,000 or higher. And Ray is the headliner here and the first thing we need to discuss. He did just face the Rays last week, and to me, that's always bad because it means they are familiar with him, and that does downgrade things. But usually when we're talking about a repeat matchup, it's not a situation where the guy took a flamethrower to them with 13 strikeouts across 7 innings. So I think even when we consider the familiarity here, even when we consider the salary at $11,000, Robbie Ray is still the top pitcher on tonight's slate. The 13 strikeouts are backed up by an 18.8% swinging strike rate for Robbie Ray, and it's not like this was some outlier performance. He's been doing this for a while. He has double-digit strikeouts in 5 of his past 6 starts, and the 13 strikeouts, not even the peak in that time. He had 14 against a Chicago White Sox team that hits lefties really well. So he's doing this against everyone. It should be no shocker he would do it against a Rays team that does strike out quite a bit against lefties. We've seen Ray re-increase his slider usage over his past 10 starts. Been kind of a roller coaster there this year. But in that time, in that 10-start sample, which is a large sample, he has a 36% strikeout rate. He is letting up hard contact just 34% of the time. We've talked about this a lot. It is too soon to say if Ray is going to keep the lack of hard contact up because, I mean, it does stabilize around 60 to 80 balls in play, and he surpassed that well over. But it's hard to believe that Robbie Ray would suddenly be a guy who suppresses hard contact because if he does that, he would be potentially the best pitcher in baseball. Not sure if it's hyperbolic, but he'd be up there for sure. And that's why he is in the AL Cy Young discussion. He has a 1.80 ERA in this time. He has allowed no more than 3 earned runs in any of these starts. He gets the Rays on the road, which is annoying because we do want our pitchers at home in general, but it's not a bad park factor by any means. So yes, Ray does get downgraded as a result of this being a repeat matchup. But when I'm looking for negatives here, that's the only one I've got. Everything else says Robbie Ray is a stud and a guy we want to build around for DFS. So I think he's great. Good with him in all formats. If you want to go there in cash, totally okay. I might be there myself just because I do think that it grades out pretty well for Robbie Ray. But overall, despite the repeat matchup, he is still number 1. Now, if you do worry about repeat matchups, which you should, and you're saying, okay, I don't want any piece of this, maybe you're worried that Ray will be too popular. I do like Sean Manaea a lot as an alternative. I always like Manaea. So if you've listened this year, you know that's not a surprise, but I think there's extra reason to like Manaea tonight. It seemed like I think he changed it completely because the velocity spiked like 3 miles per hour on that thing about 12 starts ago. And he has a 28% strikeout rate in that time with a 5% walk rate. That leads to a 3.36 skill interactive ERA. That's the good for Manaea. And that's why I think that you can consider him above Ray. The reason I'm not going to put him there personally, not going to rank him above Ray, is that there's still some flaws, specifically too much hard contact from Manaea. So he's probably going to let up some home runs, some solo shots and stuff like that. It's way too much hard contact. And that's, again, why Ray is number one, Manaea number two. But Manaea does have upside. He had 9 strikeouts in back-to-back games earlier on this month. He also had 13 strikeouts against this very same team back on July 22nd and has not faced him since. So Ray, to me, is the top guy, and I feel like he's in a tier of his own. I'm comfortable having a healthy amount of Manaea tonight after Robbie Ray. So I would say Ray's 1, Manaea 2. Feeling pretty good about both of them, and they will be my top 2 pitchers for tonight. The third pitcher in our value guy is a bit risky for sure. It's Nestor Cortes, and Cortes is letting up too many fly balls, which does hurt his floor a lot. I still think he's in play. And a big part of that is the matchup. He's facing the Rangers, and they've got some lefties in this lineup, and they just can't generate power against lefties, partially as a result of the fact they are kind of lefty heavy. They are dead last on this slate in isolated slugging. They are dead last in fly ball rate. And for Cortes specifically, that does help a lot given the issues he does still have. The next question here would be upside. Cortes has been adding to that recently. He's been starting to throw more cutters over his past 7 starts. His strikeout rate is 27% in that time. He's also going pretty deep in games. He's gone 95 plus pitches in 4 of his past 5 starts. He's gone 100 plus twice in that time. So that's pretty good. A lot of this for Cortes, a lot of the strikeouts came in his most recent start against the Orioles. But he was climbing before that too. He had 11 in that game against the Orioles, 7 against the Orioles 2 starts before that, but not just the Orioles. He had 7 against the Twins, 7 against the White Sox. So Cortes has shown upside, and he's also shown the building blocks there to make it seem like it is legit and sustainable upside. Cortes is $8,500. I am okay getting to him at that salary. I just think that he's a decent chunk behind Ray and Manaea. I will have exposure to Cortes. I do, want to make that clear, but I think for me, it's probably Ray, and then slight tier down to Manaea, and then a full tier down to Cortes as the number 3 pitcher for tonight. But overall, really good pitching slate, and 3 guys I do think we can feel good about for tonight. As far as the stacks go, it might be tough to stack the Astros with Robbie Ray given his salary, but with Manaea and Cortes, we can do it, and we're not going to be using Ray in every lineup, and I do think that we can at least get exposure to the Astros, even with Robbie Ray, given the value guys lower in the order. So let's talk about the Astros here. We'll get some value options later on. The Astros are facing Jaime Barria. He joined the rotation mid-season, and that happened because of injuries and ineffectiveness for the Angels rotation. It's not a situation where Barria really forced his way into the lineup. He hasn't been super crisp since he joined the rotation. He's been leaning more on his sinker his past 7 starts. He's got a 5.02 ERA or skill interactive ERA in that time. Strikeout rate is 16%. The batted ball data hasn't been bad. That's been the one positive here for Barria, but it hasn't been enough to erase the issues elsewhere. His ERA is 5.46. He did do well against the Astros last week, and he let up just 1 run over 4 innings, but it seemed like he got a bit lucky because he walked 4 guys in that game, and now they're seeing him again, and it's their 3rd time facing Barria in the past 5 weeks. He might be able to shut them down again because he did just do it last week, but I still think it's worth a shot here in using the Astros against Barria. And against Barria, we do want to favor lefties, but both sides of the dish are fine here. The strikeout rate against lefties for Barria goes under 10%, but he lets up a couple more fly balls, some more hard contact to righties. So I wouldn't care too much about handing this to the batter here. I would just say pick the best dudes. Whether you need to get the value plays like Jose Siri, Jeff McCormick, Jake Myers, like that, that's totally fine. But also okay to get your Kyle Tuckers, get your Yordan Alvarez, and feel good about that as well. So I would just say pick the best dudes when it comes to stacking the Astros for today. We'll talk more about them, I'm sure, in the Q&A at 4:30 p.m. tonight. One place I'm good looking for some value. If you want to get help jamming in Ray, jamming in Altuve, the good Astros in there as well, I'm good checking out Milwaukee. They're facing Jake Woodford. Woodford hasn't been bad since he got stretched out. His ERA is 4.00 across 6 outings. One of those outings was against Milwaukee as well. So he's been good, and that does include a start against this team. But I think there is some funkiness in the underlying numbers with Woodford, though. His skill interactive ERA as a longer pitcher is 4.69. It gets there largely because he has a 17% strikeout rate, which is pretty low. You can overcome that with great batted ball data, but Woodford doesn't have that. He's letting up a 48% hard hit rate, so a lot of balls in play, and they're getting hit hard. Woodford is getting some ground balls. I just don't think that's enough to explain why the good results are there, and it's not enough to give me confidence that the good results will stick around. I think it's possible he's just gotten lucky, and lucky is not something that sticks over a larger sample. It's possible the results will stay the way they've been for Woodford, but I think I'm okay, given the peripherals, going against that and using the Brewers here, stacking them and taking advantage of the value they have in this lineup, which is pretty good value. I think that I would say probably the best value plays in the slate are on this team. They've got Omar Narvaez and Luis Arias. Dan Vogelbach hasn't gotten good results since he came back, but the batted ball data on Vogelbach since returning is very good. So I think eventually the power will return. Those 3 guys, Arias, Narvaez, and Vogelbach, are all $2,600 or lower. And I will use any and potentially all of them to give me more flexibility elsewhere. I think that's totally okay. It does lock up catcher / first base and utility if you use Narvaez and Vogelbach, but that's fine. I don't care about that too much. So I think Milwaukee, a really good value stack for today. The third stack for me is kind of a hybrid where they've got some value, but they've also got some legit studs, but also a lot of mid-range guys. And that's the Atlanta Braves. I give them a slight advantage over the Yankees for 2 reasons. The first one is that they're lower salaried, and I can better stack them with Ray. The second one is that they're going to have more balls in play in this game. We'll talk about that as it pertains to the Yankees in things to watch. And I think that does make the Braves the preferred option here. They're facing Humberto Mejia, who is coming up from AAA, and Mejia does pitch in a pretty rough park for pitching in AAA. But the numbers there are a concern. He has a 5.53 ERA. That could be influenced by the park, but a 20% strikeout rate and a 44% fly ball rate. It's a lot of balls in play. A lot of them are in the air, and that can lead to issues. We've not seen any reason to expect that across 2 starts in the majors either. He has a 21% strikeout rate, not many ground balls, so it does seem like the AAA numbers are legit. And in the majors, Mejia is allowing a 40% hard hit rate. That's probably going to get him in trouble at some point, especially against a powerful team. And the Braves are a very powerful team. They have a 200 ISO against righties, which is the best mark on the slate. They have not announced whether the roof will be open tonight yet at Chase Field. They typically do that in advance. You can just Google Chase Field roof information. It'll say, hey, in the series, we're going to have it open XYZ, closed XYZ as well. They've not announced that yet. I think that because they've not announced, there's a chance that this thing is actually open tonight. If it is, upgrade the Braves offense, and they would be a solid top 3 for sure, but potentially even higher than sitting 3rd on this list if that roof is open. And the bottom of the order here is pretty fun for the Braves. Got Dansby Swanson and Travis d'Arnaud. They've got some power. Eddie Rosario hit for the cycle last night, and Rosario is hitting for a ton of power recently, which is very different from what he was doing earlier on in the year. As you know, I think I don't like using guys batting 8th in the National League lineup because it does mean they're in front of the pitcher. I think it's okay to go with Rosario here or maybe Jack Peterson. I think that Rosario the preferred option between the two, but I'm more lenient on that in this lineup than I am on others just because those guys batting 8th actually have some power, some ability to do some stuff on their own. So I think the bottom of the order here, pretty attractive if it helps you get to Robbie Ray for tonight. Obviously, if you can get to the other guys, sick, get there. But there is some value in this Brave stack. Moving to things to watch, talking about the Yankees, I do like them a lot. The one downside is the lack of balls in play. They're facing AJ Alexy in his 3 starts. He has a 24% strikeout rate, a 16% walk rate, which means he's letting up a ball in play about 60% of the time. I like that number. If I can get it closer to 80, that's great. I can't always get there, but that's kind of the preferred zone. He's at 60%. And we saw this in AAA too, where got a lot of strikeouts, walked a lot of guys. he does let up a ton of fly balls. So the balls in play he does allow can be impactful. So it could get out of hand. So I do want to get to the Yankees here. Like if he walks a couple dudes and lets up a 3-run home run, you're sitting pretty then. But I do want to rank the Yankees below some of the others as a result of the lack of balls in play. So the Yankees are a really solid number 4 and would be a top 3 stack on a healthy number of slates. Shane Baz is making his MLB debut today against the Blue Jays. Really tough task, pretty rough on the Rays there, making him face the Jays, but I don't want to stack here. I think Baz is too good for that. He pitched really well in AAA with a 1.76 ERA. He had a 36% strikeout rate. He seems really good. I'm not going to use him tonight because the matchup is really tough, but like I'm definitely not stacking against him. He's looked pretty good. So Shane Baz, fun guy to watch for tonight. Finally, I am okay with some one-offs on the A's. They're facing Tyler Anderson, who is a low strikeout guy who lets up a lot of fly balls, which means they could get some home runs here tonight. We just don't see Anderson let up enough hard contact for me to full stack it. Like I could see one guy running into a pitch and, hitting a dinger. It's tougher to see 4 guys doing so. So I love Matt Chapman as a one-off. Very okay with Yan Gomes as an almost value play at $2,900. Also fine with Sean Murphy if he winds up getting the start behind the dish instead. But I think the A's better for one-offs than for stacks for tonight. Let's close up shop with some dinger calls for this Monday slate. The boring one is going back to that Yankees team, talking about AJ Alexy, because he does let up all those fly balls. I think that allows me to go Giancarlo Stanton. Again, the lack of balls in play is more so a detriment for the full stack than the one-off. So Giancarlo Stanton to me against a high fly ball pitcher, very in. So Giancarlo Stanton is my boring one for today. The fun one is Omar Narvaez. Again, talking about that Brewers team. I think that they're set up pretty well against Woodford. Does let up a lot of hard contact. Could see that ground ball rate start to increase as he is stretched out more. So Narvaez, good hitter, puts the ball in the air, has shown some power this year. I think that he's a good pairing with Giancarlo Stanton as my 2 home run calls for today. That's all we have here for the solo shop. But as always, here on Mondays, at least for the next 2 Mondays, we will be having our MLB DFS Q&A once again, just after our Monday Night Football Q&A. That's with Ryan Williams and Jessica Gridiron making her FanDuel Q&A debut. That's at 4 to 4:30, talking about the Packers versus the Lions, talking single game DFS, talking props, talking betting, and more. That's right here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. I'll be on at 4:30 breaking down your questions on tonight's MLB DFS slate. We're at 4:30 on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we're at 4 on Wednesday for those Q&As. Also, do not forget to check out our Week 2 Recap Podcast, which will be up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed around 10:30, 10:45 today. You can also catch it on the FanDuel YouTube page in live time at 9 a.m. Myself and Brandon Gadula. If you've got more questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you tonight with your MLB DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again on Tuesday. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.